You say it helps you sleep. You say it relaxes you. You say it's just a release. But deep down, you feel it. That emptiness, right after. That hollow silence when the screen fades and you're left. Not full, not whole, just drained. No one's around, no judgment. Just your own shadow watching you repeat the same cycle. Again and again. You tell yourself it's normal. Everyone does it. They even say it's healthy. But if it's so harmless, why does it keep making you feel weaker? Why do your goals blur? Why does your motivation vanish? Why does your edge, your fire, feel dulled? Because this habit doesn't just drain your body, it siphons your discipline, your presence, your ability to delay, resist, and own your power. The Stoics warned us, freedom isn't the right to indulge, it's the strength to withhold. What you give yourself to, you become. And if every night you offer your energy to a fantasy, what's left for your future? Not just your dreams, not just your relationships, but the very essence that makes you a man of direction. See, it's not the act, it's the agreement. That you'll stay small, that your time is cheap, that your worth is negotiable. They didn't chain you. You handed them the key. Every tap, every scroll, every just one more is a message to your subconscious. I don't own me. But what happens if you stop? If you sit through the discomfort? If you face the urge and say, no, not this time? Then something changes. Subtle, but seismic. You stop leaking. You start building. We're not here to shame you. We're here to wake you. Because if you knew what your energy could become, you'd protect it like gold. You'd stop chasing release and start cultivating strength. Not in theory, not in books, but in silence and in every decision you reclaim. The urge isn't evil, it's ancient. It's your biology, wired for survival, not screens. But in a world that knows exactly how to hijack your instincts, the real power is not in resisting the urge. It's in understanding what it really wants. You think it's pleasure, but what it's actually craving is connection, purpose, stimulation that means something. That scroll, that video, that 5-second dopamine hit, it's not desire, it's displacement. You're trying to feel alive, but in doing so, you're teaching your brain to settle for shadows. You don't need more control, you need more clarity. What are you running from every time you reach for it? What moment are you avoiding? What truth are you trying not to feel? Because if you stare long enough into the silence, you'll hear it. That quiet ache, not for pleasure, but for power. Not to escape, but to return to your mind, your mission, your meaning. Every great man you've admired, from Aurelius to Epictetus, they all mastered one thing: saying no when the world screamed yes. It wasn't repression. It was redirection. Energy stored, focused, concentrated, until it forged something rare: discipline. And discipline is the gateway to freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to become who you were built to be. And if that version of you could speak right now, he'd say, don't waste me. Don't trade your future for 5 seconds of fire that always leaves you cold. Transmute it. Train with it. Let it push you deeper, not into craving, but into character. Because the habit isn't just costing you time, it's costing you respect. The kind you have for yourself when no one's watching. And that is the kind that builds empires. You don't relapse because you're weak. You relapse because you're tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of trying. Tired of carrying a weight that no one sees. And in those quiet hours, when your body feels empty and your mind starts whispering lies, the screen feels safer than the silence. But here's the thing. The man you're trying to become, he doesn't live in silence. He listens to it. He trains inside it. He meets the edge of discomfort and says, I'm not afraid of you anymore. Because he knows something. Every urge you resist, every craving you breathe through, every night you stay with the tension instead of numbing it, is one brick. And brick by brick, you're building a version of yourself that doesn't fold when the world says bend. You don't need another motivational quote. You need to remember who the hell you are when no one's validating you. You need to feel that energy rise in your chest, not as shame, but as signal. You're alive, and aliveness can be harnessed. So the next time that voice shows up saying just one more time, just one escape, just one click, you'll smile. Not because you're tempted, but because you finally see it for what it is. A test. And you're done failing tests that were designed to make you small. If this stirred something deeper, don't scroll. Subscribe. This isn't about perfection. It's about reclaiming your energy and owning your edge. Let's build the version of you that can't be shaken. It was never about just stopping. It was about transmuting, turning the same fire that burned you into the force that builds you. See, this energy you keep giving away, it's not a curse. It's your creative voltage. Every time you hold back, not with repression, but with awareness, you charge it. You become electric, not needy, not numb, but alert, alive. You walk into rooms and people feel it. They don't know why they're drawn to you. They just are. Because retention isn't just physical, it's spiritual, it's psychological. It tells your nervous system, I don't chase anymore. I don't beg, I build. And when the cravings return, not just for pleasure, but for distraction, for comfort, for the familiar escape, you don't panic, you don't flinch, you breathe. You meet it eye to eye and say, I know what this is, and I know who I am now. You stop identifying with the old narrative, the one that said, you're broken, you're addicted, you'll always relapse. And instead you start living like the man who's writing his own story, one decision at a time, not by fighting the urge, but by feeding the purpose. There's a reason ancient minds called it sacred energy, because it builds things, not just life, but legacy. When you don't give it away mindlessly, you start noticing things. Your focus sharpens, your voice deepens, your body shifts, slowly, quietly, but undeniably. You wake up before the alarm. You finish what you start. You remember how it feels to respect yourself. Because something sacred happens when you stop looking for temporary relief and start aiming for permanent power. You no longer scroll at 2 a.m. hoping for a fix. You sleep like a king because your mind is finally at peace. The fog lifts, not all at once, but in layers. And every time it does, you see a version of yourself you thought you lost, or maybe never met. That man is focused. That man has edge. That man walks into temptation and doesn't flinch. He doesn't brag about his discipline. He doesn't post about his healing. He just lives it. Quiet, present, locked in. People ask what changed. You just smile. Because how do you explain that you stopped chasing pixels and started building a life? How do you describe the shift from escaping your body to finally living in it? You don't. You embody it. And the world adjusts. One interaction at a time, they begin to feel it. Your restraint, your presence, your unshakable calm. They wonder how you got here. But you remember every night you almost folded. Every time you said no. Every quiet win that nobody saw. You remember. And you stand taller for it. You start noticing her differently, not through the fog of craving, but through the clarity of presence. You're not chasing her curves anymore. You're observing her character. You watch how she speaks when she's not being watched, how she treats those who can't offer her anything, how she carries herself when no one's looking. Because now, you've seen what happens when you let your energy lead. When you walk into a room and don't need validation. When you're so centered, she starts orbiting you. She feels it, that you're not starving, that you're not begging for her attention, that your gaze isn't hungry, it's aware. And that makes you rare. Because men who've faced their shadows, men who've tamed their impulses, men who've turned desire into discipline, don't just attract women, they command respect. She leans in, not because you pursued her, but because you became the kind of man who doesn't need to. And here's the secret. She doesn't want someone who's controlled by need. She wants someone who chooses her from strength, not from lack. Someone who isn't swayed by temptation because he knows his worth. Someone who's walked through fire and no longer flinches at smoke. That's who you're becoming. Not a man who fears his urges, but a man who's mastered them. Not a man who runs from women, but a man who knows which woman is worth stopping for. This isn't about repression. It's about direction. You're not numbing out. You're waking up to your power, to your purpose, to your peace. You're sharper now. Not because you studied more, but because your mind isn't hijacked every night by guilt and shame. You wake up clear, focused, unshaken. The chaos is still there. The world is still noisy. But you've stopped leaking energy to battles you already won in your head. You used to chase dopamine. Now you chase discipline. You used to escape boredom. Now you sit with it and let it speak. And from that silence, ideas come. Solutions show up. Your vision clears. You're more present with your work, more commanding in conversations, more at peace when alone. Because you're no longer negotiating with weakness. You've stopped being at war with yourself, and the results? You start doing in a week what used to take you a month. You finish books instead of scrolling feeds. You take care of your body without needing motivation. You build momentum, and that momentum, it compounds. People notice. They can't name it, but they feel it. You're not just being good. You're being powerful. They say, you've changed. Yes, you've changed your chemistry, your posture, your energy, your edge. You're not drained. You're directed. And it all started the moment you stopped giving your strength to screens and started giving it to yourself. You didn't lose anything. You reclaimed everything. There's a silence now, but not the kind that feels empty. It's a charged silence, one that holds intention, presence, power, because the urges didn't disappear. They just lost their throne. You no longer bow to them. You see them for what they are, momentary noise disguised as need. But you've rewired your response. Instead of reaching for the usual fix, you breathe, you pause, you remember. What are you really hungry for? validation, comfort, control. No screen can give you that. No fantasy can feed your purpose. So you return to your breath, to your stillness, to your real edge, the one built not from repression, but from ownership. This is where the world starts noticing, not just in how you move, but in how you don't flinch. You look them in the eye. You speak less, but say more. You walk into rooms and shift the energy without trying. Because when you stop leaking your essence, you radiate it. And the world doesn't know what to do with someone that whole. This space is built for those who want to heal loudly, but live quietly, where growth is sacred and peace is the new power. Want more? Watch the next. It's not just about breaking habits, it's about becoming unbreakable.